what would be another possibility for this funnily looking shape to appear between income today and income at some point in the future, either my income in the future, or the income of my children, or my income next year? What would be other sources of such shapes? Yeah.
Like access to knowledge in like the job market, in the sense that if you, let's say you're raising a family that has a higher income, it's liable that your parents would teach you more from a younger age and will allow you to have a higher income.
Right. So, for example, so access to the job market. For example, it is possible, if I can rephrase what you were saying, that people who live in a village, their horizon is the village, where they are growing whatever, they are growing stuff and they are making some income, but they don't have the perspective in mind that they could go to the city where a number of other jobs are available. So in that case, for people who have very little money and live in a village, well, their children will again also live in the village and have very little money. If suddenly something opens the possibility to go to the city, for example, someone comes into some money, gets the option to buy a train ticket, goes to the city and figure out the options there, then suddenly you have access to a number of other opportunities, potentially much more rewarding, that would potentially create this S-shape, where the fact of being poor means that you live in a relatively restricted environment, you stay there, and then when you become just a bit richer, that opens this opportunity that helps you become much richer. That's a very nice example. Yeah.
Maybe another option is savings, which depends on how much income you have, because the more you save, the more you can invest in higher income producing activities. So the poor people have no money to save, so they're stuck there, but as you get more income, you can afford to save more, invest more, and that produces your future income.
Right, so saving is a very interesting example. So saving, again, you could say, well, if you suppose, for example, that people saved some fixed fraction of their income, then if I have more income today, I will save more, therefore I will invest more, therefore I will be richer in the future. Now, if it was a fixed fraction of my income, again, would I have I would necessarily see a relationship between income today and income tomorrow just because I save more. But if it's a fixed fraction of my income, what else do I need for this S-shape to come? Yes?
You need for poor people to not be able to save this fraction because they, for instance, spend their money on food or things that they need to buy today, and so are either the fraction goes up with income or it's just lower for poor people.
Right, so the first possibility for an S-shape to appear due to savings is that actually people do not save a fixed fraction of their income, is that for some reason the poor save less than the rich. So that would create, so if that's the case, and we're going to, let's talk through whether we have reasons to think that the poor would save less than the rich. But let's first take it as given for a moment and say, let's assume the poor save less than the rich. Then if that's the case, that might also create, for example, assume the poor save nothing. Then if you're very poor, you have no income tomorrow coming out of investments. And then if you start saving when you become a little richer, and that money is invested, that starts creating some return for that money, and you get into the steeper part of the S-shape. So that's the first mechanism through which savings could create a relationship between your income today and your income tomorrow that would have this S-shape. Now, what we do have to explain is why is it the case that the poor would be able to save less than the rich? And that is something that I think we all have in mind. Say, yes, of course, the poor don't save because they have no money. But one thing I want you to keep in mind is that the poor have no money, but they have a present and they have a future. So unless they think that they will have more money tomorrow, or unless for some reason they are extremely impatient, then the poor should want to save as well. Because of course today they have very little money for food, but tomorrow they'll have very little for food as well. So we need to go a little further than to say, well, of course the poor save because they have no money, right? Again, let's not go into the details of that. I think there are good reasons to think that the poor would be less able to save than the rich, and we're going to go through it. We're going to have a whole set of lectures about that. But just keep in mind that it's not so obvious that the poor would be less likely to save. Another, sorry, you wanted to talk.
Access to healthcare and medicine.
Right, so let's go to health. Let's finish saving, and then I'll go back to you for health. Another reason why there might be a relationship between income today and income tomorrow of this form due to savings, even if the poor save exactly as much as suppose that the poor and the rich save both a proportion of their income. There could still be a relationship like that. Yeah.
The rich could be able to like invest their savings more effectively.
Exactly. It could be that the rich have access to better investment opportunity. For example, it could be that the bank is just not interested in a very small saving account. And in fact, it's the case that the banks are not interested in very small saving accounts because as soon as you're a bank and you take the saving of someone, the government is on your back to make sure that you don't run away with the saving, which is a good idea, but that costs money. So maintaining a saving account for someone costs some amount of money. And regardless of the size of the account, it still costs the same money because you need to do all the paperwork. So as a result, if you come to a bank with your 5 rupees, the bank is going to say, thank you, but I don't want your 5 rupees. Whereas if you come with your 5,000 rupees, they say, sure, I'm going to put it in this like very nice account for you with a nice return. So that's one reason right there, that the poor might have to save under the mattress where the money might disappear, where it might be stolen. And so the return on saving for the poor might be very low. It might even be negative. Whereas the return for the rich might be richer, might be higher, either because they have access to this savings account, or they can, for example, start a small business. For example, when you want to start a small business, is it worthwhile starting a tiny business with almost nothing? Maybe not. Maybe it needs to be large enough for it to be worthwhile. So even if the poor and the rich were to save the same amount proportionally, there might still be something related not to how much they save, but what's the productivity of those savings. You were talking about healthcare. Why don't you tell us what you're thinking about healthcare?
So at lower incomes, you can't really buy a lot of medicine, and maybe you can reach a point where you can start buying medicines or buying, healthcare. And maybe towards the end, when you have higher income, it levels off because you don't encounter the health problems that you might at lower incomes in the first place.
Right, so healthcare might be another source of that. For example, if you're very poor, you might not be able to purchase very simple, relatively cheap technologies that prevent you from getting sick. It could be chlorine for your water. It could be a water filter. It could be a bed net to put on top of your kids when they sleep so that they don't get malaria. So all of these things might all be like some fixed investment that if you can't afford them, you can't afford them. And then you're getting sick more. Therefore, you're less productive. Therefore, you make less money, etc. So that is that's another source of potential where we would have this S-shape. Again, because then we again have to think about these goods are things that are a little bit lumpy, like a bed net, for example, or a water filter that you can either afford or not afford. So if you have enough money, you afford it, and then you can be generally healthier, don't lose all your calories to diarrhea and other nice things like that. And if you're poorer, you will be sick all the time. Or paying for the doctors, for example. So for example, if someone is sick and very poor, they might not be able to pay for the doctor, then they stay sick, so they can't earn money. And again, the doctor is probably, a doctor visit is like one fixed lumpy investment, which you may or may not be able to afford. So that would be another source of an S-shape like that.